we live?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? Somebody sticks you a thumbs up, we're live. Okay, so we're continuing our studies in the 5th chapter of Hilchos Beis HaBechira, which of course is about the Beit HaMikdash, the chosen home. And what we're going to be learning about today is a little more about the original Dome of the Rock. Not because it was a dome built around the rock, but because it was, to the best of my knowledge, the only actual dome in the Beit HaMikdash. Even though dome buildings were kind of in style once upon a time, or maybe even today in that part of the world. But the Beit HaMikdash didn't have any domes. It's a large rectangle building, where the Rambam says large square building, no domes, flat roof. But there was this big adjunct building on the side of the Azara, which is the primary courtyard of the Beit HaMikdash. That's Beit HaMikdash proper, the outer scrimmage of the actual Beit HaMikdash. And it was built onto the side, on the north side. So, once again, I like to do this to help everybody get their bearings. Kotel is here, okay? You're praying down over here. Mount of Olives is here. Down here, where I am, is the Silwan Valley. This is the city of David, where all those archaeological diggings are going on. That's down here. And north, which is today the direction we're pointing at the camera, would be the Arab quarter today, or the Arab 3/4. So that's, and we know at the time of the Beit HaMikdash, there's this large retaining wall, a fortress, the Antonia fortress, built on the north wall. On the southern side, an enormous amount of empty space. On the western side, less empty space. On the eastern side, a little more. But then again, when you add in the Ezras Nashim, probably not that much more. And the Beit HaMikdash is situated, set in to the northwest, in the 500 cubits. But we don't know where those 500 cubits are, and that, of course, is the key source of confusion that we're just not sure of. At any rate, so the Azara, here we have a management of the Heichal. Okay, here's your kotel. Here's the other wall. The walls of 500 amot, the wall of the Chayil. Here's your building, and here is the original courtyard. Here's the additional courtyard added on. So on the north side of the original courtyard, there's a large domed building. This is called Beit HaMoked. We talked about it yesterday. It was actually a domed dormitory. That's where the Kohanim who were on call used to sleep. And we talked about this room yesterday, and we also noted that it too has divided into 4 quadrants. It had 4 chambers. The 4 corners were sectioned off, and there was chambers. What were those chambers for? So this is kind of the first office space we're studying about now. What was it used for? So this is Halacha Yud. The Rambam goes on to say, Uma heim mishamshes. And what were they used for? First of all, the Arba L'Shokes Shtayim were B'Kodesh and Shtayim were B'Chayil. 3 were on the sacred side, which is this side, and 2 were on the 2 and 2. So 2 chambers were on the mundane side, 2 chambers were on the sacred side. Now, according to the Bar Tanura and other commentaries in the Mishnayos, the building kind of actually straddled the wall, which means the wall of the Azara kind of came in on 2 sides, and there was a building that was built on both sides of the Azara. The Rambam does not say that. It's pretty clear that the Rambam holds that this bayit, B'tzad HaAzara, was B'tzveina Mibachutz. The Rambam is very clear, not of the opinion that the wall straddled the Azara. It does not actually intersect. It does not actually invade the Azara proper. It's in the wall outside the Azara, between the Beit HaMikdash Azara wall and the outer wall known as the Chayil. So how do we work it out then? Why is Shtayim Kodesh and why is Shtayim Chayil? Rashi Pispisin Mavdilim ben HaKodesh ben HaChayil. There was small kind of maybe like wood markers. According to some opinions, they were stone markers. Most opinions, they were wood markers. Little markers that I guess were part of the floor. But these wooden markers would be a line of demarcation in the middle of the Beis HaMikdash. So if we are to say that that's the wall of the Azara, that makes perfect sense. The Azara wall is coming over here. Here's a building. And in the middle of the thing, you have like a little demarcation. Rambam doesn't hold like that. So clearly they were Kodesh. They had a certain holiness attached to them, but it was not the same kind of holiness of the Beis HaMikdash itself. It has to be that when we say that 2 of them were holy, we say that the inside part of, or the southern part of this building, the southern half of it was, since it was Pasuach Lazara, since it had a door that opened into the Azara, into the actual Beit HaMikdash proper, so that's why the first half of it was considered to be more sacred. But it doesn't mean Kodesh with regard to, for example, eating of the Karbanot. which the Kohanim had to do in sacred scrimmage. According to the Rambam, certainly that could not take place in the Beit HaMoked, no food allowed. This would be beyond the scrimmage of actual holiness. Sorry, the Rambam would hold you could eat over there. I apologize. You could eat there, but you couldn't slaughter the korban there. The korban has to be slaughtered in the Azara. My mistake. You may have been able to eat there, and it had a modicum, a minor level of holiness, but did not have the level of holiness to be able to actually bring an offering. And it seems that somebody who would walk into the Beit HaMoked, at least according to the Rambam, if he was in a state of ritual impurity, that person would not actually violate Kedushas HaMikdash, and he would not be formally held liable for having penetrated the inner sanctum or sacred scrimmage in a state of ritual impurity. All right, so now we have these 4 quadrants. 2 are holy, 2, more mundane. What happened in there? Moy Mishamshes. What was this office space used for? What were these chambers used for? So the Rambam says no. Maravis Droimus, the southwest. So if we're talking about the southwest, remember, here's your west, here's your Kotel, here's your city of David, right? Pardon me. No, if here's your Kotel, here's your Mount of Olives, here's your city of David, there is the north side, what we call today the Arab quarter. So that means north, south, west, east. If we're talking about Ma'aravis, where are we? Ma'aravis Droimis, we're talking about the southwest. So the south side are the 2 quadrants that are closer to the Azara. North is further away from the Azara. The south side is closer. The one that is holiest, meaning it's most west, because due west is where the Kodesh HaKadoshim is. So the southwest chamber, this was Lishkas HaTloyim. This was the chamber in which they would keep the korbanot that were actually slated for offerings. So they always kept there was a couple of korbanot that were always prepared, always ready. A couple of little ewes or little sheep or whatever, little goats. So these animals were always prepared. They had already been checked, and they had been examined, and they had already been made right, and everything was good with them, although they would be examined right before the korban again to make sure that there was no blemish whatsoever. That's what Lishkas HaTloyim was, and this took place on the southwest. Once again, we're on a sacred side, and it makes sense. Korbanot are being brought over there. What about the chamber adjacent or across on the holy side, which is Droimis Mizrachis, which is now the southeast, so it's on the south side, so it's still on the side which is considered holy, on the inner scrimmage of this big domed home, big dome building. That's where Lishkas Eisi Lechem Apanim, that's where the bakery was. And they would make the Lechem Apanim, the special showbread that was made and prepared for Shabbat morning, switched over, and then it remained on the golden table for a period of time. There were much more than one table. Shlomo Melech made like 10 tables. So there was a lot of Lechem Apanim business going on, and that's where this was a special bakery area for the Lechem Apanim. Okay, now going on to the other side of those little markers, the area which is not considered Kodesh. So here it gets really interesting. Mizrachis Tzfeinis, on the east, the northeast side, which is further away from the Holy of Holies. So the north, Mizrachis Tzfeinis is, yes, so it's on the east, set back towards, further away from the actual area. So in Mizrachis Tzfeinis, on the northeastern side, Ba Ganzu Beis Chashmonai Avnei HaMizbeach. That's where the Kohanim from the Hasmonean home, which Chashmonai is a name of prominence that was given to a family of Kohanim. So the family of Beis Chashmonai, that's where they kept Avnei HaMizbeach Shekitzitzum Malchei Yavan. This is where they kept the stones of the altar that had been defiled by the kings of Greece. So they brought actual swine and all kinds of idolatrous worship on the Mizbeach. So that Mizbeach was rendered unfit. And therefore the Jewish people had to rebuild the Mizbeach. They actually dismantled the Mizbeach, which in principle is a prohibition. You're not allowed to do it. They dismantled it because there was no choice. It couldn't be cleansed. It couldn't be used. And after it was dismantled, a new Mizbeach had to be built. But these were stones of the Mizbeach. It's about as holy as you get. So they were piled into this room, this special chamber. That's where they were. They were untouched. They were unused. Now, according to some opinions, this is also Lishkas HaChesamis. This is also the area where people would come by and do business, where they would get their tickets. So if you had to get, for example, oil or fine flour or wine to bring along with your korban, you wouldn't come with cash into the Beit HaMikdash. You're not allowed to come with cash in the Beit HaMikdash. You'd have to go outside the Beit HaMikdash at some point, and you'd have to purchase a ticket. And you would come into the Beit HaMikdash with your ticket, and you would trade it in. That's one of the chambers of the Ezrat Nashim. the chamber which is on the would be on the side closer to the Azara, which would be the southwestern side, the southwestern corner of the outer area. That's what that was lishkas hashmanim. You would pick up your oil, you'd pick up, and you'd be able to use that as a carbon. But here first, according to some opinions, the office where you pay the cash and you'd pick up the ticket for that which came along with the carbon. Now, the actual carbon, as I mentioned a few days ago, would be purchased in one of the stalls along the Tyropian Way, which is kind of the road that's underneath the Kotel Plaza. Today they're restoring that whole road, so you can actually see the stalls. The stalls are still there on the side, on the what do you call the western, along the western facade of the western elevation of the outer retaining wall. So that street was called Tyropian, the Tyropian Way. It's a Greek word, and there you would buy your carbon. You go around up onto the Beit HaMikdash, go around to the north side, purchase your ticket, and then you'd come around from the eastern door and you'd enter into the Beit HaMikdash holding your little animal and your ticket. You'd pick up your oils, your flour, your wine, and then you'd enter into the actual Azara to participate in the carbon. And finally, Tzfainas Marav is the northwestern side, which this is, once again, not in the holy side. Okay, so we're in the half that is not. This was the antechamber for a mikveh and a secret washroom that was located in the catacombs, in the basements beneath the actual area of the Temple Mount. Not underneath the Beit HaMikdash, but underneath the area of the Temple Mount. And that, Be'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about this fascinating secret mikveh that was located subterraneously, which could only be accessed from this north... Gotta keep directions over here. From this northwestern corner of the Beis HaMoked, from the chamber in the northwestern corner, that was the entranceway, the entry point to get into that basement, and that's where, as we said, the tefillah, the immersion would take place. Whose immersion? What kind of immersion? For what purpose does there need to be a mikveh in this place? This, Be'ezrat Hashem, we will be studying about with God's help tomorrow. Thanks for joining us.